Hello, welcome to Old Nerd Reads His Marvel Comics in Order. This is episode 123. This time I read Iron Fist, number 12, April 1977 issue. So, since it says April, it actually came out 3 months prior. It came out in January of 77, probably. Actually, it was on the newsstands then. My copy is pretty nice. This is an acceptable copy to keep in my collection. Look how I don't know if you can tell, but the back is very white. It's not stained. Doesn't need erased. Doesn't need an eraser run over it. The pages are quite white, actually. Again, we've got Chris Claremont writing and John Byrne drawing. This is their first big collaboration together. This series. In the background, look at that. Can anybody tell me what's going on in that screen right there behind Captain America? Daredevil is punching out somebody. I'm pretty sure he's punching out Jim Shooter, and I'm pretty sure that's Roger Stern in the background. Last issue we had Roger Stern and Jim Shooter kind of giving Matt Murdock's girlfriend Heather the eye on the street, and Jim Shooter said that's a girl worth being late over or whatever. And now we've got Daredevil punching him out this issue. It's kind of funny. And John Byrne and Jim Shooter classically didn't like each other. And well, I wouldn't say Jim Shooter disliked John Byrne. I think Jim Shooter respected John Byrne. I don't think John Byrne respected Jim Shooter. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just the way it seems from the history I've observed. I mean, Jim Shooter took over shortly after this as editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics and got everybody in line. He kind of ruled with an iron fist, I guess, and I don't think John Byrne liked that. I get it. I get it. I don't like being told what to do either, but um, if you're going to run a business, you've got to have certain standards in place, and I think that's what Jim Shooter did, and I think that's what John Byrne didn't like. But anyway, I did a video in memoriam on Jim Shooter, and I'll put a link to it here right here. But I think this is where must be where the fracture started between John Byrne and Jim Shooter. I bet you this is kind of where it started. I think this little in joke right here is indicative of how John Byrne was feeling about Jim Shooter back in 1977, 1976, even before he ultimately left Marvel and went to DC and took over Superman back in 1986. So not even 10 years after this, the animosity between the two would cause John Byrne to leave Marvel. And Jim Shooter didn't stay in Marvel much longer either. He got fired in 86, 87. So it's interesting, but the combination of those two talents at Marvel created my favorite era of comics ever, the early 80s. And it's too bad that those two didn't get along. Like, as a fan, I bet you there's other old nerds like me, fans of Marvel Comics, who wish that John Byrne and Jim Shooter were best pals, and they compromised and like Marvel Comics from the 80s onward just continued being awesome. But they didn't. Real life happened, and I think this is probably an early indication that all was not well between Jim and John. But anyway, they created some awesome stuff nevertheless. But guess what? We're talking about Iron Fist right now. We're not talking about that. The Shield and the Power. Iron Fist versus Cap. I think this is probably a Dave Cockrum cover. He's been doing the covers here, so I'm guessing this is Dave Cockrum. That looks like a Dave Cockrum face. Jarvis down for the count. That figures into the story as well. All-out action as Iron Fist faces the super might of Captain America. So we've got this brand new character in 1977, Iron Fist. Now we're putting him up against Captain America. Uh, Pretty sure Captain America is going to mop up the floor with this guy. But since he's a new guy and he's doing pretty well, we got to put the two against each other to, make the new character measure up to the old metric of Captain America. Am I right, Papa Rick? That's the way it works. So here we go. We've got John Byrne with Dan Adkins doing the inks, who I think does a good job on John Byrne. I dig his inks on John Byrne. Uh, back in this time, Byrne was excellent. I think this is my favorite era of Byrne, is his late 70s stuff. Very early 80s, but mid to late 70s, very early 80s. That's John Byrne at his peak. And Dan Adkins is an inker that I think is sufficient to the task of making John Byrne looking as good as he actually is. There's other inkers at this time who inked John Byrne's pencils who did not pull it off quite as well. But Dan Adkins, not my favorite, but by far not the worst inker for John Byrne's pencils. I don't know. Is this the first time John Byrne drew Captain America? It doesn't look like anything John Byrne drew after this, as far as Captain America is concerned, but it's still very unique, very in your face, and it's awesome. I love it. I can see the John Byrne there that most people know, but I can also see like somebody, just starting out and getting their feet under him. So I see both of it, and but either way, it's still awesome, especially at this time in 1977 when Sal Buscema was drawing every other comic book Marvel was putting out. And nothing against Sal Buscema, but this is the 80s. Sal Buscema was the 70s. Even though Sal Buscema represented himself really good all through the 80s and into the 90s, especially, that was kind of the face of it at the time. Like Sal Buscema was of the people that took over for Jack Kirby after Jack Kirby left in 1970, went to DC for a couple of years, and he had just come back at this time as well. But the roster of talent that took over the Marvel House idea, the Marvel House style, the artist that took over from Kirby, who established the Marvel House style. Sal Buscema is very representative of the Marvel House style after Kirby left, post 1970. So that one, from 1970 till here's 1977, drawn in 1976 probably. 5 years later, you've got young upstarts like John Byrne coming along and upsetting the apple cart. Like, you've got a lot of comics right now drawn by Sal Buscema of the old guard, but you've got these new guys coming in, John Byrne, and taking what those guys established, the generation before them, and making it new and fresh and exciting. And that's what John Byrne did. Anyway, Iron Fist has been coerced by the Wrecking Crew. Here's the Wrecking Crew. He has been coerced by them into infiltrating Avengers Mansion. The Wrecking Crew has taken his love interest, Misty Knight, captive and said that they'll kill her unless Iron Fist breaks into Avengers Mansion, kills all the Avengers except for Thor, so that the Wrecking Crew can come in and just kill Thor. That's their plan. They just busted out of prison. Okay. So Papa Rick can't come in here and steal all my thunder. I busted out my official handbook of the Marvel Universe number 12 with an entry on the Wrecker and the Wrecking Crew. And here we go on page 19 and 20. We got the Wrecker. and the Wrecking Crew. So, according to Marvel Universe, published in 1983, at this time in 1977, the Wrecking Crew was still fairly new. Before this, they faced the Defenders in a couple of issues of the Defenders. And this is kind of their next appearance, I guess, is these like issue 11 and this issue of Iron Fist. This is their next appearance as a super team after that. And they all share a bit of Nordic power from the Wrecker's mystically enchanted crowbar, much like Thor's hammer Mjolnir is mystically enchanted. So is the Wrecker's enchanted crowbar by Hela or the Enchantress. I forget. One of those Nordic goddesses that is from Thor's universe. Anyway, the Wrecker started out as a Thor villain, but now all of these guys share in the Wrecker's power. They're called the Wrecking Crew, and this is kind of their second misadventure. Prior to this, like I said, they were in a couple of issues of the Defenders, got arrested. The Wrecker breaks out of prison. After they fight the Defenders, the Wrecker's crowbar gets cast into an alternate dimension by Doctor Strange. This happened in the pages of the Defenders when these guys fought the Defenders, like I said. So the Wrecker was depowered. His mystically enchanted crowbar was banished to an alternate dimension, and he was in prison, no longer superpowered. However, in the pages of the Fantastic Four, which I did an episode of Old Nerd Reads Marvel Comics in Order like a year ago, where, oh man, my nose got stuffy all of a sudden. A year ago where where the Fantastic Four fights the Wrecker. He was in prison. The puppet master called him out of prison by making a puppet of him. And in doing so, that called his mystically enchanted crowbar from the alternate dimension. It called it back to this dimension into his hands, and now everything's back to normal. He's back to being the Wrecker. So I'm going to put a link to that right around here someplace so you can watch that episode. But the Wrecker gets the crew back together after he gets his enchanted crowbar back, and they all share in his powers. And now they're after Thor. They want to kill Thor. After they've been in prison, they want to get their name back. And in order to do that, they have to kill Thor. And Thor's a member of the Avengers, so they coerce Iron Fist into infiltrating Avengers Mansion, killing a bunch of the Avengers and leaving Thor unguarded for them to come and kill. Otherwise, they'll kill Iron Fist's love interest, Misty Knight, who is their captive. This is a lot of... just page one is all kinds of stories about Marvel. And my nose is stuffy. Anyway, let's get to the action. This is kind of interesting. Like Iron Fist, it takes him hours to get past the Avengers Mansion security. Being a gifted Kunlun graduate with his ninja-like skills, he's able to get past all of the Avengers. Tony Stark Enterprises, Stark Technologies, defensive security technology. He gets past it and drops in, surprises Jarvis. And at the same time, coincidentally, it's just such a coincidence, Cap is reading about Iron Fist, where the newspapers are calling him the Kung Fu Killer. And then they issue a retraction that he's actually innocent. He wasn't a killer. He was but Cap didn't read that. He was so mad. He was so mad about this Kung Fu Killer that he just reads the newspapers up to where it says Kung Fu Killer, and he stops right before reading where the newspapers like, oh, just kidding. We didn't, he's good. He stops right there coincidentally. So he goes off half cocked. And at the same time, coincidentally, Iron Fist has broken into Avengers Mansion, and Jarvis, spotting him, proclaims that he needs to warn Captain America that there's an intruder. And in doing so, he stumbles down the steps, and Iron Fist does this elaborate save for Jarvis so that Jarvis doesn't break his neck falling down the steps. This is just some awesome, like John Byrne layouts. Like what Todd McFarlane and Mark Silvestri and those guys were to Marvel Comics in 1990, just before they broke off and formed Image. Like John Byrne was to the late 70s comics with this kind of layout, this kind of artwork, this kind of page layout. Uh, it's just awesome. I don't know what to say except it's very dynamic, very exciting. Give me more of this, please, kind of artwork. Here we get a splash page. Look at that splash page. Holy crap. So Iron Fist just tumbled down the steps to save Jarvis breaking his neck. So he saves Jarvis' life, but they get to the bottom of the steps just at the same time Cap busts in after reading newspaper articles that were misinformation about Iron Fist. He busts in at that inopportune moment, and now he's mad, and the fight breaks out. And this is a great fight. Iron Fist holds his own, but Chris Claremont and John Byrne are very wise. They realize that Captain America is probably, even though he doesn't technically have superpowers, he has the super soldier serum, but he's not like a mutant. He's not super powered. He just took a serum and it augmented his strength, his reflexes. He's like the ultimate soldier. So it's kind of a, does he have superpowers or doesn't he? Whereas I guess Iron Fist doesn't really have superpowers either. Like he's just the ultimate martial artist. However, he does have the Iron Fist, which is a mystical power, which he does not use all the time. Mostly he just depends on his basic human martial arts skills. So he holds his own against Captain America. And he loses basically and decides he's got to use his Iron Fist, his mystical power. And he whacks Captain America, who blocks the shot with a shield. Look at that. Look at these pages. Oh my gosh. This artwork. It never got better than this artwork. It never got better. That was the top of the line right here, folks. In 1977, same. Oh, look. Center pages, the staples came loose. So I got this. It's very sad. It's very sad. Anyway, let's get back to it. Everybody, get a tissue. I need a tissue. Stinking nose stuffed up. So we've got a big battle between Cap and Iron Fist, where Iron Fist basically loses. He has to summon up his mystical Iron Fist power, and it's enough to smash Cap back through a wall. And he's like, oh my god, I've killed him. But no, you haven't. Cap's the living legend of World War II, the greatest generation of Americans. He's coming right out of that wall like, that was a pretty good punch, son. And he whips his shield at him. And the shield slices, Cap whips it so hard that it slices through the structural integrity of the building. And Iron Fist, realizing he can't beat Cap, just gives up. And he stands there stone cold. He's not moving. He's going to let the building fall down on him because he knows that Cap is the ultimate hero. And Cap does not disappoint. Cap saves him before the building can crash down on him. And he's like, I can't believe he did that, but Iron Fist says, "You would be the hero I've always heard you were if you let me die." Meanwhile, down the sewers, here comes the wrecking crew with Misty Knight as their captive. Man, look at this artwork. Just take a minute and look at this artwork. Okay, let's go on. They pop their heads up out of the manhole cover where Iron Fist gives the OK symbol from the front door of Avengers Mansion. The wrecking crew comes in. Iron Fist says, "Look, I killed Captain America." Captain America's playing possum there. Oh, we've got to come back to this letters page. There's an interesting letter here. So we lead the bad guys, the wrecking crew, into the danger room, basically. So Tony Stark is testing out some danger room stuff for the X-Men, for Professor X. So that's what's going on here. This is like danger room type stuff. Iron Fist lets him in, closes him in, seals Misty Knight out. Cap wakes up, says, "Just kidding, I'm fine." And now it's a fight. So the wrecking crew versus Cap and Iron Fist. And it's so good. This fight is so good. This is why, I don't know, like this kind of stuff, these panel layouts, this drawing, this rendition of our favorite heroes, it doesn't happen anymore. Like there's got to be artists out there who can still do this, but the comics that are getting published with these characters, they don't do it. And it's too bad, because this is awesome. This is what we're missing out on today, us old nerds. Like, we want comics to be this great, and they just aren't. So it's Cap and Iron Fist. I almost said Spidey. Cap and Iron Fist versus the Wrecking Crew, and Iron Fist gets the last punch. He punches out the Wrecker, and that's the end. And Iron Fist and Misty Knight are going out on a date. And next issue, we've got the Boomerang. So that is my copy of Iron Fist number 12. Looks like it's in great shape, but it's got that the staples let go on the middle pages here. Let's go to the letters page real quick. I want to point out a letter here. Where'd you go? I gotta find it. Nothing's ever easy. Here we go. So in here we've got a letter from Joe Duffy, future Marvel Comics writer. Coincidentally, she will be, in just a few years, she will be the writer for Power Man and Iron Fist. I think at the same time right now, there's Power Man comics coming out, and as well as Iron Fist. Iron Fist ends in a few issues, and then he goes on to join Power Man. So Power Man's title becomes Power Man Iron Fist, and Joe Duffy will be writing that title, which is kind of weird that she's got her letter in this issue, and it's just a few years after this that Joe Duffy will be basically writing this character. Kind of funny. She had a stint on Star Wars as well, right when Star Wars ended at Marvel Comics. She wrote the last couple years of Star Wars. So that's neat. The letters pages, we got a letter from Joe Duffy, and she praises this title and the writer and the artist very highly, as the point of her letter. So anyway, this is what I do on this channel. I read my Marvel Comics collection in publishing date order-ish. Like, I just, month by month, I read what I have in my collection. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe. If you know any other Iron Fist fans, John Byrne fans, Chris Claremont fans, Captain America fans, please share this video with them. That would help me out. And otherwise, subscribe, drop me a like. I appreciate you watching. Stick around for more of these videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.